Welcome to the RevOps Loop podcast with Maarten and Stjepan, brought to you by Digital Reach and the Nonprofit Tech Shop. Get ready to learn about revenue operations, HubSpot, and beer.
Hello. Hey guys, welcome to episode 11. We're already at today's topic. So today we're going to be talking about is RevOps in nonprofits specifically. So RevOps in nonprofits, how does that work? What makes it unique? How is it different from quote unquote regular RevOps? And what can we learn from it? So obviously this is in a large part based off of our own experience. Both Stjepan and myself, we work with both for-profits and nonprofits. So seeing a lot of these differences firsthand, and yeah, would be good to dig into those a little bit, see what exactly those differences are, and perhaps more importantly, like what can we learn from it? I think Stjepan, I think I speak for both of us. When working sort of across industries like that, you always pick up certain traits and ways of working that you can then apply in our case, for-profit industries as well. So there's a lot there. So yeah, we'll chat through some of those and then go through some specific tools and features specific to nonprofits and things that we'd want to call attention to. So yeah, without further ado, Stjepan, I'll just let you kick us right off with RevOps in nonprofits. What makes it unique? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Okay, so first thing that comes to my mind is that nonprofits don't have less need for RevOps, but they have less margin to get it wrong. And what I mean about that is like usually the budget, the way they're set up, different from B2B and other like industries we work on. But like most common thing across nonprofits we work is the revenue definition. And what I mean about that is usually we are talking different terms. We are talking different lingo. So it's donations, it's grants, events, memberships, sponsorships. That means different for a nonprofit than to your like usual B2B business. So and there's like multiple revenue streams that are like completely different with like how the life cycle stages are set up for a nonprofit. And that's the next one is like what life cycle stage? What's a life cycle stage for a nonprofit? Is it a donor life cycle stage? Is it a, I don't know, volunteer life cycle stage? Is it a leadership life cycle stage for a leader in a community? Those are like different things that usually is the first that I notice that you need to know in order to get information from nonprofits. But what's something that you see as a difference?
Yeah, it's those two big ones, and I agree with that. So like revenue is not sales. Obviously, there are multiple streams of revenue, and again, this is different from one nonprofit to another, right? Some are built more like, I guess, traditional for-profit organizations. If you think about museums, and there's ticketing revenue, and then that ticketing revenue needs to come into the reporting. So that there's, I think, in situations like that, there's a huge overlap with how, again, the for-profit RevOps world works. But then you have the nonprofits that are donation-based, right, or that have sort of like a large financial backing, where it's not crowd-funded donations, but more private donations. So that again shifts the whole, again, revenue model. I say that it's not exactly a revenue model, but it shifts that whole framework, right? Depending on where the money's coming from, that changes how that whole organization is going to operate. So I think, at least for me, that was the first, and when starting to work with nonprofits, the first thing to kind of wrap your head around is that you sort of have to forget the regular way of working in that sense of, you know, your sales, your marketing, and then you have your customers who come in, you have lifetime value and acquisition costs, and you know all these the classic metrics that you've sort of built your whole marketing RevOps foundation on, and essentially redefine all of those, right? And just start basic revenue. What does revenue mean here, right? And then, like you mentioned, life cycle stages. What do stages really mean here? What is the, you know, what are the stages that people go through? Because I think that would be the last thing I would call out there. And again, sort of the biggest I guess I would say eye opener in a sense is that the one of the main differences is that that funnel of, let's call them leads for the sake of the discussion, but when leads come into your organization through whatever way that may be, what that funnel looks like and what they go through, and what you always get back to is that there is not one funnel. There's various ones, and they kind of go on parallel, and people can go back and forth. If you put that into practice, it would be like, a donation comes in, and then someone could forget about your organization and maybe come back 1 year later. In the meantime, they could be signing up for events and attending events. And so, how do you qualify all of that? There's a lot of a lot of ways you can do that, but what is for certain is that it's not a straight vertical funnel, right, where they just keep progressing through stages. It's a lot more dynamic up and down. And I think that is a trickier part of getting started with RevOps in nonprofits, is that you really need to focus on mapping that out first. What are my
because like
needs? Multiple.
because like once you know that and once you map that out, then it's very easily to get a recommendation to a nonprofit. Okay, I think based off what we workshopped, those are the things, like those are the tools that you can use, because some of them are budget constrained, and like every tool needs to click immediately. Like they don't have, maybe some of them don't have so much money to spend on like just like give me all the tools. And then the next thing is like what's the team looking like who is on the nonprofit. Some of things that I learned working with them, there can be a couple of people that are very technical, but there can be also a lot of people that are not so technical. They know how to get donations, they know to do their job very well, but like they're not
Right.
technical, and like adding something new can be a big bottleneck where like the change management is there.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, like, what's one thing that you needed to unlearn
Yeah.
when, like, from the profit world, when you start working on your maybe first or second nonprofit?
Yeah.
What would you
Oh,
say for that? Yeah.
I guess, and first of all, I do like that you called it out in terms of like the different types of people that you work with, because I think it's true. There's a lot of some of the most talented people working in nonprofits, and that may not be the most technically savvy. I think that's a whole separate discussion as well. And that I think one of the reasons for that is because the technical landscape for nonprofits is just a little bit all over the place, right? There isn't all these super clean tools that you use for everything that are nicely integrated, like you see on, if you go on LinkedIn, you look at SaaS tech stacks, everyone has a super clean thing that they're sharing. Like that doesn't really exist as much in nonprofits. So there's less of a focus of, hey, we need technical gurus. So anyway, separate discussion on that. But in
Most
terms
of the
of what,
times are like legacy tools, I think, like most of the
well,
times
yeah, I
what we
guess,
see.
yeah. So and maybe just to stick on that for a second is that I think because because of the way the industry there is, and the dispersed tech stack that is out there, and everyone uses multiple tools, and are they fully integrated with each other? Nope, not all the time. That's become less of a, I guess it's sort of like less of a priority in that sense. So you'll have the folks who are working in these nonprofits and really doing great things, and they say like, hey, what is the tech stack you're using for this? It can, you and I have seen it. Sometimes it's the most basic stuff, right? It's the literal example of working out of a Google sheet, and then you see what they're doing, and oh, actually they're going around doing massive canvassing efforts, hosting these massive events, getting thousands of people signed up, tracking their interests, like a lot of great stuff that they're doing, collecting, engaging folks. And then you see how are they all tracking on very basic setups, and which I think this is where then often we get looped in to sort of help optimize that and bring it to the next level. But yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. I think in terms of, so what the unlearn, it's not necessarily unlearn, but where the focus has shifted a lot towards is in the general for-profit space. I think what my focus always was is, again, linear funnel, right? You get leads to customers, and then you have the customer retention piece of it all that's kind of added to it. So I always looked at it as right? There's getting them into the business, and then you keep them in the business, and those are just two separate things. And then in nonprofits, those are fully merged, right? It's this constant, tracking of what again leads in your organizations are doing, what next steps for them would or should be, what action do I want them to take, how do I get them to that action? After I do that, how do I get into another action? So you could kind of look at it as, it's more of a focus on the quote unquote retention piece. It's not really retention. It's just keeping the engagement up in all the folks that are connected to your organization, and less so separating it as there's a funnel to bring leads in, and then we have the retention piece. It's just more. It's one big continuous managing of the supporters, the donors, the constituents, right, that are linked to your organization, and really
Yeah.
shifting that mindset. I think that was the biggest one. Yeah.
Okay. So, but okay. So I think I agree with that. It's like
Yeah.
it's very different, especially when you think like what you touch base, like the data and the data silos that can be like, okay, we have a donor database in this spreadsheet. We have our email tool here. We don't
Yeah.
know anything about what we just have this spreadsheet. We export, we import, we hope for the best sometimes because
Yeah.
like we cannot
And that
do
happens a lot.
segmentation. It takes a lot of time. We're a team of 5 to 10 people. We don't know what they did 10 days ago or something. So I think like one thing that I needed to unlearn was like how the data is structured in some of the
Okay.
nonprofits we work for and what tools they're using and how to approach that. Like I would say the biggest challenge is like some that I started with is they need RevOps, but they don't have time to make it like a wrong for the first time because it's a change management that's very impactful for anybody in
Yeah.
nonprofit world. They cannot
That's
start a project and then
yeah.
okay, we need to go back and start it again because like the
Yeah.
donors are not waiting. They want to be
Yeah.
delighted. They want
Yeah.
to support them, and they
Yeah.
are not like yeah. So
No, and that's a good point because I do think, and again, looking at sort of the projects that we've worked on, right, in these typical for-profit organizations where you get looped in, and there's a RevOps project. Hey, we want to get a grip of our campaigns and make sure that they're working together better and our reporting and our tracking to have that all that on point. The initial lift is a lot smaller in those companies than it is in nonprofits because there's usually already a pretty good base, meaning there's a tech stack that is kind of designed to work with each other anyway, and you just have to go in and configure and optimize, etc. Versus with nonprofits, I think we've been there in multiple cases, right? You get looped in. There's this general sort of RevOps focus of, hey, we want to understand our different revenue streams and our user journeys. It's a same kind of request, but then you look at the starting point, and it's all right. It's 3, 4, 5 completely disconnected systems that don't have any kind of native integrations, right? So all of that would require custom builds, etc. So there's a much larger gap that needs to be bridged right from the get-go, and I think we noticed that in those projects, like, we typically have a much larger starting phase, right? Where it's like, all right, we need to build out the base first, connect all the data, perhaps migrate some systems over, etc. Right? Every project's a little different before we can then go into the actual, now let's optimize our revenue, right? Now let's optimize our streams. So yeah, I think that's a big one. And I think that again ties into the whole, that industry as a whole has been in a way left behind, I guess. When you look at some of the tech and the tools that are in there, like it's a little outdated, and that causes a little bit of a bigger gap to bridge whenever you want to really set up marketing RevOps projects for them. Yeah,
yeah, and
but it
then
does sound
there's like
interesting and challenging.
yeah that's very interesting, very challenging. One thing that I also think is something to talk about when we are talking about trials for nonprofits. It's like the let's say their reporting nightmares. and
Okay.
sometimes it's over customization that like I see they're trying to do, and
Mm.
but probably the most one that I can think of is like recently it's like the migration stories, or maybe like
Yeah.
migration horror stories. What you
Yeah.
said is like legacy systems, maybe some, maybe not legacy, but like they're like locked. Like there's no API, there's no clear
Right.
API
Right. Yeah.
documentation. You need to request it from the whoever owns the software to
Right.
build like a
Yeah.
custom solution. And then if you
And
you
those are
ask
things.
like, oh yeah, go ahead, go
As I
ahead.
say, and those, like, because that's a perfect example. Like, those are things that I feel like you run into way less in the for-profit space. Like, oh, you have a tool, but
Yeah,
there's not really an API connection. We have to figure it out. It's like, no, like the typical tools that I think folks are used to in the for-profit world, they all have that, right? They're either natively integrated with each other, or there's a very available, accessible API, and that you can access because it's built for that. But it's, and I think that it's a perfect example because I think we've run into that more than once where it's like, this is the tool we use.
yeah,
We can't
yeah.
really connect it
We,
as an API. We're not really sure how that works. Like, wait,
Yeah, and then there's
the
like
starting point.
the tool. Okay, let's bring the data to the new tech stack that we're using. In our examples, often it's HubSpot. And like, how do
Mm,
we bring the data? Like, we can export. Okay, can we do the custom? So like, flow the data while we are doing like any onboarding, and then you get okay, we can do that, but like that software has another pretty vague connection to another software that they are using. So in my example, we had
mhm,
like a Bloomerang, and then the Bloomerang had integration with Donor Score, or I like to, so you can see
mhm,
the wealth of a household. Okay, we
mhm.
can do that, but like HubSpot doesn't have that. So like, what's
Mm.
the next best thing to do? So yeah, we can use HubSpot and build those scores,
Yeah,
get data from somewhere else. Yeah, we can, but like they will not allow that to like just directly flow to HubSpot. So
yeah,
that's somewhere where I think nonprofits are also getting uh,
yeah.
maybe
And
getting, I don't know, robbed is a good word, but like sometimes it's like,
right,
okay, somebody locked you in that system and they are
yep,
not growing with you. They're not allowing
yep,
you to expand what you want to do so easily. And I think that's not a good thing to do,
yeah,
especially with somebody is like doing impactful things.
yeah. No, 100%. And it's exactly right. Like I said, they get sort of locked into systems. I think that would be one thing where when we're talking to, I guess newer or smaller nonprofits or nonprofits that are working out or starting out, it's okay. Like step one, I think the main thing that I'd always recommend, and I don't know if you're the same, is that to make sure you include a source of truth platform, right? That is very publicly accessible, meaning like, hey, it's fully integrated in sort of the larger tech stack um, world. It's not exactly the right terminology I'm using there, but you get what I mean, right? Like taking something like a HubSpot, and I know we're both like HubSpot fans, but HubSpot, Salesforce, whatever. Taking like a modern tech CRM and really starting to build out your business on that, so that at least if and when other platforms that you may be using, right, for your ticketing, for your donations, et cetera, if you're making shifts around that, if you at the very least have a source of truth platform that's going to make it easy for you to shift data over, connect the new platform, right, that you can do that, and so that you aren't stuck. But what we see quite often is that, again, these organizations, they don't have a tool like a HubSpot. They have only those 3 4 siloed platforms, all of them with very tough integration setups and hard to get data out of it, etc. And there's not one unifying tool. Yikes! Then it becomes a larger
Yeah.
a larger project altogether. So
I agree. I agree with that because I think like what talking to a couple of nonprofits like for the past year, I was like in an assumption that like there's a tool graveyard, like if I can say that, that they have.
right,
And what I mean about that is like, oh, when we do like workshopping and mapping and how like what they're using, it's like, oh, we have this tool. I don't think nobody's using it. We are paying for it, but sometimes this person logs and gets this data, and then they retype that data to this sheet or to this
Right.
tool.
These flows.
And that, like, okay, maybe the that nonprofit can pay that monthly, yearly, whatever, but like it shouldn't be that way. You're like, if you need data and you're paying already, you can just like pass the data to where your team is it. They need to like do some reporting, like board members reporting, maybe some, like, I don't know, donor like donor managers. They want to get that data, and based of that data, connect it to what you already have in some other system and say, okay, we will focus in the next 6 months on this campaign because the data is showing us from these two systems that if we reach to them this and we use this personalization and we can hook this to them, they will be like more connected to us. And that shouldn't be the case. Like like we just need to log and
that reporting piece of it, I feel like that's another one of those where, hey, you say, okay, what are things that you learn from the nonprofit space that you apply in the for-profit space? So that reporting piece is a big one for me, at least. The reason for that is because, kind of like what you mentioned, right? The reporting is not as straightforward. First of all, there's multiple parallel journeys, and so it's a different way of looking at reports. And so if you look at some of the dashboards, reports that we are setting up, a lot of it is, picking up or identifying, let's say, a supporter of an organization, identifying if this is more of a donor person or someone who is more of a volunteer who signs up for events based on their donations. What are their main topics of interest? What are the best channels to engage them? Is this someone who's going to be reading updates more on their phone versus web? Again, none of that is new, but it's all of that is so much more important in the nonprofit space, because that's really what it's all about. It's all about visualizing and me understanding, like you, Stjepan, as a supporter, what is the best way for me to engage with you? And I know that that's a similar story as you would have in the for-profit space, right? You're looking at prospects and customers and you're trying to figure out the best ways to talk to them, but you're doing that in a pretty linear approach. Like, what's the best channel to reach you? I see Stjepan clicks more on search ads than Facebook ads. Okay, he's going to get more search ads, and then I adjust the messaging based on what he's clicking on, etc. In that for-profit space, I feel like it goes really a couple layers deeper, where it's like, based on what you're reading, what you're doing, I'm tracking everything to get a full idea of who you are as a supporter, what's how I can engage with you, but then also really understanding what is important to you so that I can bring the right information to you, share assets, etc. All that to say, is it completely different? No, I just feel like the reporting piece of it, because it's just a bit more complex and less linear, you're forced to just dig a bit deeper into how can I fully understand folks connected to my organization, and how do I visualize that, and how do I report on it? Because it's all easier said than done, and then you have to put a graph together and like, how do I even visualize this? So I feel like it pushes you a bit out of your, again, speaking for myself, pushes you a little bit out of your comfort zone of like how to report on what is meaningful for nonprofits. So it's an interesting one.
Okay.
I don't know if you've had the same, but I feel like that's been a good challenge, but one that opens new doors.
Yeah, and some that we saw and build are very complex reports that, like, I think we needed to use data sets and things that are like not out of the box reporting features that you usually get on a CRM.
You don't really have those, right? Which is again,
you don't really have those, and that ties to the and that ties to the architecture of the data. That ties to the tools that can integrate or cannot integrate, because at the end of the day, you want your team to use the tool, use it like until every day, and then you also want your managers or board or like I don't know, maybe somebody VIP, let's say VIP, somebody that's funding some causes, that they have that reporting that they need. And you can get that if you don't have the right setup in some cases, or you're locked into the tools that cannot do that advanced reporting that maybe was advanced 5-10 years ago. But like to ask you one more question that could just get to my mind. Like, if you needed to, like, let's say nonprofit comes through the door and they say, okay, Martin, what's the 3 tools where we need to start? Like, what 3 tools would you give, like, recommend
Yeah.
them? Okay, and why?
So, and I don't know if I have 3. I have 2 that come top of
Okay.
it. So one is what I was saying earlier, like that one centralized source of truth, kind of technologically advanced platform. Again, I say HubSpot because that's what we work with. It's easy. HubSpot, obviously, they integrate with it with everything. So having at least one main CRM tool like that would be the first and foremost thing. Again, because we've seen people fall into the trap of not having that 3, 4 silo tools, and then it's a huge lift to change or upgrade any of those one individual tools if you don't have at least one centralized source of truth CRM that is kind of plugged into the ecosystem. So that would be the main one. The other one, again, kind of ties to it in a way, but your websites, right, where that is built, right? Again, having that built on ideally a similar the same platform or a strongly connected platform to your CRM. The reason for that is, again, this is different from nonprofits to nonprofits, but the general idea of website experiences, user experiences need to be very tailored, very personalized, etc. So you need to have, whether it's a HubSpot or WordPress website, not really a huge fan of WordPress websites, but right, a website that you're able to feed the data into from your CRM. I know this person visiting. I know their engagement type. I know their engagement level, and really being able to like personalize that experience continuously, right? Prompting new donations, showing the relevant events.
And
You can only do that if
like
you have a dynamic
personalization at
website.
scale.
Personalization is
Personalization
scale.
at
So again,
scale.
this is nothing new. This is something that all companies essentially want to do, but it's something that as a nonprofit I would put extra emphasis on because again, that whole user journey, understanding it and optimizing that is such a bigger focus point there. So having a website that helps you with that, yeah, I think those would be the 2 main ones
Okay.
that come to
So,
mind.
yeah, okay, we didn't do 3, but let's say
No,
that the number 3 will be somebody then ask you, okay, I have my
there's
2 tools. Like, what are some automations? Make it like 2 or 3 that you will recommend for me using those 2 tools that I can easily set up, like automations, like automation bins for me, like maybe donor engagement, I don't know, of event follow-ups, like some grant management. Like, what are some automations that you see that like I can run on those 2 tools very easily, very fast, and that will be a big win for me and my team?
yeah. Oh, okay. Does this fall under this category? I'm not sure, but when you're looking at the different revenue streams or like how your organization is built, donors, grantees, supporters, volunteers, all of that. First thing I would definitely do with any organization is, all right, for each of those individual types of stakeholders, if you want to call it that, making sure that those are all treated as separate objects in your whole RevOps scheme, right? And then making sure that the way that those are associated with each other is set up correctly, right? One contact can be a volunteer for multiple events. So we need a volunteer to event association. They can also have multiple donations. Okay, we should have a donation pipeline. We should have an object that represents donations that are automatically associated to the correct contact, right? If, again, this is from your organization, if household is a relevant term for your organization, right? And maybe you're doing work that is specific to households. Okay, make sure that there's a household object that then automatically connects the right contacts to that household. So setting up all of those association labels to identify these are all the different objects that essentially builds or contributes to the framework of my organization. That would be the first thing to do, and then automating how all of those get associated. Because the last thing you want then is disassociated thing. We have a donation from a contact. We don't really know. Like, no, that should all be clearly connected to each other. So I think that would be a main one.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I know I put you on the spot, but I just wanted to like see, okay, you recommended 2 tools. So like, what can I use those two tools? Okay, I know the data and everything, but like, is there something where I
Mhm.
can like have a quick win? And I think you just
Mhm.
explain it. Like, if you have correct
Yeah,
tools,
and
you can correctly segment based of the types of like what your nonprofit is doing. Some of you
yeah,
maybe are not doing
and
households, so you
and
can
maybe
easily
just
set it up.
to emphasize on that again. So, like, why that central source of truth is so important, especially when you're looking at automations and things. So, another example would be okay, personalizing the user experience on the website. Great. How do you do that? You can only really do that again if you have a clean source of truth where all your contact information lives, including their donations, their event signups, etc. All of that feeds into your website, so that when that person is going on your website, they are seeing the page is rendered in a way that is relevant to them. None of that is possible if you don't have a very well interconnected tech stack where your donations, your event signups, right, your ticketing system all feeds into one platform. There's just no way you can do that. So that's really
Yeah,
that's why, again, I feel like I've mentioned it now like 3 times, but
and
that source of
there are
truth
some.
platform,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
crucial. Yeah.
yeah, and there are some very powerful like systems that can help you when you have system that is like your primary one that can connect like via
Mhm.
webhooks, via API, and you have
Oh yeah.
all the
Yeah.
things needed. Uh, like I know we said like we will go through the tools that maybe we're working with. So one tool that I love is Funders Up. So it's
Right.
just like how to collect your donations. It's pretty easy to use it. It's pretty easy to connect
Yeah.
it. Uh,
Yeah.
it's
Which
pretty
is
easy to
that makes
embed
it.
it on a website. And then it's like also like we are talking about AI. Now it has like some AI opportunities, like where you can do donor propensity scoring. You can suggest the
Mhm.
amounts that somebody will donate based of the historic donations and based of the like period in a day or a by campaign. So
Mhm.
maybe that's not for everyone. Maybe you want to stick to the like the old donation via PayPal or something. But just
Mhm.
putting it out there that like if you have the
Yeah.
base, then it's very easy to like okay, let's try this because we have
Yeah.
a need for it. So
And I think that's
some
Fundraise Up
tools
is like
that you can recommend.
Fundraise Up is a great example of, like, I know we were bashing a lot of the nonprofits tools, saying, oh, they're siloed, they're not very well integrated, etc. I think Fundraise Up is a good example of one that isn't like that, right? That is very modern, easy to integrate, easy to connect to systems. So in terms of, are there specific tools to call out similar to that? There might be a few. The main thing I would just say, because I know we're kind of coming up on time though, is that for any tool that you are looking to set up, whether that is for your ticketing, whether that is to manage donations, even if it's a payment system, right? Whatever it is to before going into the features, right? And then I guess falling victim to the shiny object syndrome. Like, any one individual tool can look great and give you a very clean user experience in the one thing they do. Nice, but for any of those tools, really see what does their integration setup look like? How easy is it to connect to other systems? Is this something that they're actively promoting, or is it something you have to talk to 3 customer agents to figure out that, yeah, there is kind of an API and this is how you can access it? That's usually, I would say, that's a big red flag, right? Where it's like, if they're not, a fundraise up is showing off the fact that we can connect to multiple systems. Great, big green flag. That means that, hey, even if changes need to be made, etc., at least I can integrate this with a broader tech stack. So that's where, like, there's multiple tools you can go through for each of these individual use cases. But I think the general gist of it is, are they actively working themselves into the tech stack ecosystem? Like, are they trying to be connected to these bigger tools? If so, great. If not, be cautious. I would say about onboarding those and getting too invested in them, because then, yeah,
Okay.
before you know it, you're stuck.
Okay. Okay. So I think we like covered basically very fast, very like a lot. That's my opinion. I think we looped across like have your base, have your system that can support everything else that you do,
Yeah.
and then support your teams. But is there anything else like that you would like to like
Honestly, I think, I
add
guess
to it?
to wrap us up on it, so like what we learned from nonprofits is there's a lot of similarities, right? You're tracking users, you're trying to personalize your approach, you're trying to improve reporting, you're trying to automate steps. So I think there's a lot of overlap there. I think where the biggest difference is kind of like based on what we discussed, right? It's little shifts in nuance, right? It's user journey is not vertical; it's multiple parallel journeys, right? Reporting, same thing. It's more of a layered reporting approach, right? That is going to be very dependent on types of stakeholders, types of supporters, donors, etc. So it all comes with more nuances. And I would say, at least as a general rule, is even if you don't work in nonprofits, reading into these nonprofit use cases, especially in recent year, I would say year or two, where a lot of the bigger players in the tech industry have become more focused on making their tech available for nonprofits. Read into some of these use cases, right? Hey, how does a nonprofit use HubSpot? What's a deal to a nonprofit in HubSpot, right? And I feel like, at least for us, it opens up your way of thinking about RevOps in a for-profit context as well. So would recommend it. I think it's a great. It's an issue with a bunch of potential still. Like we mentioned, there's still a bit of a bridge to gap there, and every new RevOps project for a nonprofit usually has a bit of a heavier lift initially because there is a bit of a gap and systems aren't really integrated and there's legacy systems you need to migrate, all of that good stuff. But once you do get through that, there's so much potential there, right? There's so much data
Yeah,
that can be used. So yeah.
I would say like most of nonprofits think that like their their systems or like the data is different, but I would say to like agree with you is probably there's like 80% that's similar, and then there's like 20% that needs to be handled correctly. And I think
Mhm.
I would say like 80-85% because it's very similar. It's the way that you set it up. It's like the 20% is like, oh, we don't have these types, we don't have
Mhm.
this, we are not working with this, we just do online donations, we don't do cash, or we like, those are the differences that I'm seeing. Or it's like,
Mhm.
okay, we have ticketing and events, and we have all of this, and then we have the volunteer program, and we have the grant management program. Some of them don't have all of this, but I think 80% is very similar, and that's why we started it. And maybe we can, before we go to the beer review, end with that. It's like, just have your system that you can expand, and that's my take from this episode. Is
Mhm.
like, be careful where you put your money
Yep.
in,
Yep.
because
Don't get stuck.
what I'm seeing
Yep.
is you're getting locked there. Maybe you like for 10 years, and like you want to now, okay, let's switch. It's hard. It's hard for your team. It's hard for you, and you need to relearn everything. Sorry, and
Mhm.
like maybe you're already like, oh, I'm fine. I'll just keep doing this thing. So,
Mhm.
but
Yep.
like, yeah, I
No,
think I think we can wrap it
I
up,
think
if you
I think we
agree,
have that
and
same
we
note
can.
there of be cautious with tools you step into and like set yourself up for the future. Like don't get stuck in these silos. Yeah. No, 100%.
Okay.
So yeah, I think with that said, Stefan, we've had our first beer review of 2026 last episode. You know, we're keeping track. We're gonna have like a nice ranking at the end of the year. So yeah, kick us off. What is your beer of the week?
Okay. So
What are you
this
having?
one is Brewdog Hazy Jane.
Brewdog.
I
Okay.
love,
Yep.
yeah, I love Brewdog beers. I think they're one
Yep.
of the best. They're massive, but like, went into like how they started. Like, I think their marketing, like guerrilla marketing, and everything that they did was like awesome. So there's a story, and I love the Hazy Jane because it's a New England IPA, but it's only 5% alcohol. So
Yeah.
it's not a heavy IPA that you
For an IPA,
like
yeah,
something that I can have like multiple ones if I'm on a party or somewhere, and it's pretty good. It's like tropical, I would say tropical
yeah.
flavor. So to like give it a score out of 5, I would say like a solid 4.2 for me.
Mhm.
I can enjoy it. So yeah,
There you go.
that's for me. What about you?
Okay, nice. Yeah, I think mine and yours are kind of opposites this week. So I got Gulden Draak, if you can see it, Golden Dragon. It's another Belgian beer. I know I've been sticking to the Belgian beers. May or not may not be because of I have a whole stash from my last trip back to Belgium. But this is the last one. So after this, I'm gonna need to shift it. But no, Gulden Draak, Golden Dragon, strong beer, 10.5%. So if you're talking about your 5%, you can have a couple. I don't think you're gonna have a couple of these. This is one and done typically, but like still slightly sweet, which I like about these strong and these strong Belgian beers. So like a brown beer, right? Like a brown, slightly sweet beer, pretty heavy on the stomach, but amazing. Like again, just one sort of finish out the day. Lovely. So in terms of score, I think we're on the same. You said 4.2. I'm actually going to give this a 4.2 as well. Really good. Not one that you would have, or at least in my case, I wouldn't have this on a daily basis, but just one of those every once in a while, a special occasion. Open one of these bottles and yeah, give it a try.
Okay, yeah,
So cool.
amazing. So would you wrap it up? Wrap it up?
Yep. I think we can close the loop again on today's episode. Yeah, as always, guys, reach out on LinkedIn, find us if there's any topics, questions, things you want to chat through. Let us know. Yeah, we got a whole lineup of topics that we want to chat through this year. We're going to have more guests on the podcast as well, so that's going to be fun. So yeah, a lot more coming, but looking forward to hearing from people. Yeah, I've been getting some cool suggestions so far. So always good to hear. Anyways, guys, have a good one, and we'll chat to you all in the next one. See ya.
Yeah.